We covered a total of just over 300 miles on the expedition. Water was a constant problem, and depending on where we were at the end of each day depended how easy it was to get the water, and then we had to spend 4 hours each day pumping enough water for us to rehydrate food and to survive the following day. Food wise in the expedition was very bland. We got bored of it very quickly. It was dehydrated meals for the main meals, and then we had 250 gram snack bags to see us through the day. Most of the terrain on the Skeleton Coast was large sand dunes sweeping directly into the sea, so a very small area for us to walk in, and that area got smaller as the tide came in. Every now and again though we'd encounter a range of mountains which we weren't expecting, and occasionally we'd go for days without seeing a single form of any plant life. Temperature at night was a real issue for us. It got very cold very quickly. As soon as the sun dipped below the horizon, the temperature plummeted to around 4 or 5 degrees. If the wind was up, it felt a lot colder, especially if it was foggy. During the day, it could get to over 30, and we got fried in a few salt pans. Probably the thing I craved most on the expedition was a fresh pair of socks. I had 4 pairs of socks, and I'd love to have been able to put a fresh pair on every day, but unfortunately I had to rotate them. I was very lucky with the choice of boots that I had on the expedition. I had no blisters. I think that was again down to the socks I was wearing. The biggest problem was my wee toe. The camber on the beach meant that all of the weight went to the left foot and all of that weight went to your left wee toe, and then it just got rolled and crushed and blistered. Other than that, I was very lucky. Looking at the expedition as a whole and trying to define a purpose of it, I think the main purpose of the expedition was that we were the first people to walk that section of coast unsupported. It had been walked before, but not unsupported. The other focus for me was it was a first. It hadn't been done before, and I love being in the desert, and just wanted to get back there. The biggest thing for me, and the biggest thing I learned on the expedition, is just how precious water can be. From arriving back in the UK, it's been constantly falling from the sky. In Namibia, it's a precious resource, and if global warming continues, perhaps someday it'll get to the stage in the UK where it's so hard to acquire water that it is in Namibia, and to have to pump water from the sea for 4 hours a day to receive 4 litres each, that's a lot of work for not a lot of water. I initially felt when I went to Namibia that Namibians aren't really going to be that interested in a bunch of Brits walking along their beach. Surprisingly they were. We got a lot of TV coverage, and we got a lot of newspaper coverage. Hopefully Andrew is editing like the wind, and the movie should be put together at some point after Christmas. There's a few channels interested in it, so hopefully, if all goes well, we'll be seeing that in the new year. It's a very extreme environment on the Skeleton Coast because there is no fresh water. The moisture that everything survives on comes from fog. Fog banks come in the afternoon and they drift off. On the land, you have to be very canny to be able to find water. We managed to find one water hole, but I think some of the wildlife had been there before us and dug it out. That's the only reason we found it. The challenge as a whole was relatively safe. If the water filters hadn't packed in, we'd have been in trouble. We would have lasted probably 2 days without water, and we'd have had to get out of there. Why do a trip like this? Well, I have to go back to George Mallory when he was asked why climb Everest. Because it's there, and that holds true today. It's a first. It hadn't been done the way we did it, and I just really was inspired by that and wanted to be part of the expedition. Carrying a satellite phone on an expedition such as this is essential, because if the filters broke down, then we'd have to get evacuated. I don't believe carrying a sat phone interferes with the fact that it's an unsupported expedition. One person made the calls on the sat phone, and it was there purely, the main focus of the sat phone was to get us out of trouble should it all go wrong. But as a support, I don't believe it's an actual support on the ground. It's only supportive in a role to get us out of there. Walking daily with a 35 kilo rucksack made me really miss my Land Rover, and I certainly felt that on expeditions in Africa like that, you can't go wrong without a Land Rover. On several occasions I did resort to my book of Robert Service poetry. One poem in particular, The Quitter, a few days when I was getting it really tough and the weight of the bag was dragging me down, and I'd run out of food by about lunchtime, and I just really started questioning myself in the heat of the day, why am I doing this? And my feet were sore, my back was sore, so I started to recite a little Robert Service, mainly The Quitter, and that always carried me through. If given the opportunity to go back to the start line and do it all over again, I would be there in a flash. I miss walking on the coast, I miss living in the sand, I miss the hardship, I miss the beauty of the landscape, and I would be back in a flash. One thing I'd just like to say that really did hit home for me on the expedition was the value of water. It took 4 hours a day for us to pump 4 litres each. In Namibia, and really that falls from the sky in a matter of minutes in the UK. I really did feel that being able to turn on a tap and to get water to drink, to get clean in the shower, that first day when we got back and I had a shower, it was a very surreal experience, but we do take it for granted, and it is something we need to look at more closely.